Oregon. Let's go to Eugene, where we're going to meet up with Justin Hopkins, covering a busy weekend of his own, but things got popping right here on the On3 Recruits channel with Messiah Hampton on Friday. The number one player in the state of New York committed to the Ducks, just what Oregon needed. Justin, is this the momentum to get things going for the summer?
Well, Duck fans certainly hope so, and I know Dan Lanning hopes so. It's there is a version that people call the summer of Dan, because that's typically when Dan Lanning's kind of struck on the recruiting trail. Obviously, we're getting really close to that, or we're starting that. So yeah, Messiah Hampton feels like a big win for what has been a very long dry spell for Duck fans. There was a very brief Richard Wesley commitment to break things up, but of course that was interesting. So what I like about Hampton, obviously he's a great player. He's been a steady riser in our rankings. Our own Charles Power was on the Scoop Duck message boards talking about what they like about Hampton and what his spring has looked like and why he's risen in the rankings. All things were positive there. It feels like that's a huge win for new wide receiver coach Ross Douglas. Call him new because he showed up around March to Oregon after Junior Adams left to go coach with the Dallas Cowboys. So he was able to come in and kind of make a statement early about his recruiting ability. One big thing I like about Hampton, just besides that commitment and the fact that he's a good player, offensive playmaker, right? And this weekend, Oregon was hosting one of its top, if not its very top, quarterback targets for an official visit. So you kind of take that momentum a little bit and hope that possibly that helps you with some of the guys that are also visiting this weekend.
I agree. All right, let's talk about that five-star quarterback. His name's Ryder Lions. We got some good insight. His sister posted a pretty insightful TikTok of the visit. Here it is. Ryder Lions, five-star quarterback. We've talked about him a lot on this channel. He's been involved with USC, Michigan, but right now, Justin, it seems like all signs are pointing to Oregon. I mean, look at this visit. It seemed to go great. Family loved it. Sister loved it. Parents loved it. Is Ryder Lions going to be a Duck soon?
Well, that would certainly be great news for me, and I'd love to cover that. This was a big weekend. Oregon knew that they had to hit this one out of the park. Obviously, you can see from the videos there, things are going incredibly well. And just like EJ was talking about moments ago with Michigan, Oregon's been very conservative when it comes to NIL and its dealings, and that's been a big reason for the slow spring, slow 2025. So I think now with those settlements in place and coaches and ADs getting some clarity, you're going to see Oregon really look to make that push. And Ryder Lions is the guy. There was Jared Curtis and there was Ryder Lions, and those were the two, from the onset that Oregon really prioritized and highly coveted. And again, I was just talking about Messiah Hampton moments ago. I'm sure Ryder Lions would love to throw to a high four-star receiver like Messiah Hampton. And that's the battle. If you're looking at Oregon, I think they're trying to sell a fair NIL package and a lot of weapons around you on the offensive line, at receiver, at running back, everywhere, versus BYU. BYU is a very strong program, but I think you look at the two rosters and you would feel a little bit better about Oregon. But BYU has gotten super competitive with NIL and has made a splash so far in this recruiting cycle. And they are a very real threat for Oregon with Ryder Lions. So I know that's what this weekend was about, was trying to show him, hey, here's what we've got and here's what you'd be walking into. And I think they're hoping he doesn't visit BYU in the end. I guess we'll have to see about that.
All right. Now, last weekend it was five-star. Every weekend there's five stars on campus. Richard Wesley was the edge last weekend. This weekend it is edge Anthony Tank Jones. Originally I thought he was going to end up staying in the state of Alabama, but now it looks like Texas A&M has a foot in the door. How about Oregon?
Yeah, one of those guys that Oregon's just been real quiet with, and they're really good at that, right? Dan Lanning loves to pull those special surprise rabbits out of a hat. I do wonder if distance will be a hurdle here. That seems like something that could enter in this recruitment, but he hasn't talked a lot about that. I think Oregon's really pushing hard there, but I do think you mentioned Richard Wesley a moment ago. Obviously, if you look at a guy like Anthony Jones and you look at a guy like Richard Wesley, you're going to be using some NIL to get those guys signed no matter who you are. So I think in the case for Oregon, it would probably be fairly tough to land both of these guys. But one thing Oregon has done really well under Dan Lanning and Marshall Malco is they have contingency plans in place. It's not just, hey, we're all in on Richard Wesley and either we get him or we miss big. they've got other guys that they recruit very heavily and look for, fair deals and somebody that wants to show up. So I think that's the case with Anthony Jones. I feel better right now if you ask the question, and you might ask the question, will Oregon get Anthony Jones or Richard Wesley, which is more likely? I would say lean to Richard Wesley at the moment. I think Anthony Jones is going to be a really tough pull, out of that Southeast. But again, there's no harm in taking a swing here if you're Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, you're right. This is how Oregon kind of creeps up into these recruitments. All of a sudden he's on campus and you're like, oh, wait, Oregon's in this. All right. Speaking of being in this, cornerback Davin Benjamin was on campus. We know he's a priority. How did this visit go?
I want to say perfect. I know they're all really good visits, right? Everybody does a good job doing these things. This is a guy that Oregon does feel fairly good about. There's been a lot of chatter about Washington and others kind of creeping in the mix here, but I'm not sure there's many recruits they've prioritized more than Davin Benjamin dating back 2 years ago. They've really just poured in a lot of effort here, and Davin Benjamin is a guy that can command a big NIL package, and he's going to get a fair package, but I don't think his recruitment boils down to that. I think he's a big relationships guy, and Oregon feels great about the relationships they've formed with him. Cornerbacks coach Rashad Wadood has led the charge there for those 2 years. Dan Lanning's been involved. Dan Lanning doesn't recruit a lot of guys himself, but Davin Benjamin's been one of them. So I think if you're Oregon, you're feeling really good about how things came out of this visit. And again, just like EJ was talking about with Michigan, Oregon is now ready to be a little bit more proactive and a little bit more aggressive with a better understanding of what NIL is going to look like in the future. So I think you'll see Oregon make a push here. And Davin Benjamin is a guy I feel like Oregon probably leads for and has a great chance at landing.
All right. Well, we'll be locked into scoopduck.com all afternoon waiting for these updates to roll out from official visit weekend. Justin Hopkins, appreciate you stopping by today on the live edition of the Inside Scoop.
Yes, sir.